I remembered when I walked in, which is one of these I'm telling you. Or reminding you. Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and we do have 6 people here. So hopefully Betty will be able to show up later. I know that she's working at a new location, so she's not right here in town. So she's having to drive farther. And that's going to be some challenges. So we'll call the meeting to order. And you want to do the roll call, Kathy?
Mr. David?
Present.
Mr. Haas? Ms. Hum? Ms. Schatzma?
Here.
Mr. Slack?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Walters?
Here.
Mr. Philmeister?
Here.
Mr. Wright?
Okay, before we go any farther in an analysis of the agenda, do we have anything that we need to add, delete, or shift? Do we have any conflicts of time?
I have, I just had a question that came as I read the minutes that reminded me of the discussion of the signal at 14th and McLaughlin. So John said he was going to, Willis said he was going to contact ODOT. I would like to know what reaction or response he got from ODOT on that green arrow that was only holding.
I know. Donald Belshaw brought it up.
I mean, we could do that later, but if we had a chance, I'd like to hear about it.
Okay, I added it.
I don't really, I haven't had a chance to take any more pictures of those bicycle safety things. Can we defer that to another meeting? You want to have a discussion about that? I don't have anything to update.
Actually, Dawn and I went to a presentation, so we could talk about the stuff that was in the presentation.
Okay, terrific.
For that. Okay, so we've added the 14th and McLaughlin, so we will go back to, excuse me, my nose itches, allergies.
I mentioned, please, that at the very end of the agenda, you're going to see an attachment that says Hazelwood Speed Study. And so I just want to let you know, give you an update of what occurred there. So maybe that would be an item.
Thank you for calling that to my attention. Someday I'm going to get used to this. Okay. Approval of the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to read the minutes? Yes. And do we have a motion to either approve or amend?
I move that we approve the minutes from our last meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstained?
I wasn't there.
So Scott is abstaining because he wasn't there, and everyone else voted to approve. And we still have quorum. Yay. Okay. So we are at the Pearl Street concerns, which we really need John for, who is held up at the city offices. So how about if we move down to downtown parking committee?
Yes. I'm pleased to say that the city commission is authorized in moving forward of the parking study, the implementation of the plan, not study, and that we had a report on our main street board meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the city is beginning some of the easier things to implement, like restriping of some of the spaces, or they're going to be able to expand the number of spots and move some of the permit. The idea is to move some of the long-term permit spots farther out from the center of the city, so that it provides more 2-hour parking for customers of retail establishment kinds of things. And so really excited to see that, and they're kind of starting with the things that are easier to do and prioritizing them, and they've got some that'll take a little longer. They're going to do those as time moves along. They're also going to form a committee, much like the committee was part of the plan, in order to assist in advisory capacity for implementation. So that's my report.
Excellent.
99 E10.
Sure.
Actually, the guy who's really, he just walked in the door. The guy that, John and I are kind of tag teaming that, but he's the bigger tagger than I am because he works with ODOT, 99 E-Tunnel. And we've had a letter that is attached that went to ODOT, and John has done some follow-up. I think, eventually we're going to have to see whether, from our part, as far as downtown citizens, whether there are some other things besides what the city can do that we can do to help put some pressure on the powers to be. But we're not, I don't know, unless John knows something since he sent the email, we're not getting a lot of reaction from ODOT.
No, but I think we need to be patient on that. I just, my sense is they will. There was some bridge issues too. I was trying to get a response from them. They sent me a response to that today. So I think it'll come around. I think you just.
One of the things related to downtown, when you mention that, and ODOT is, I think you're all invited to the public hearing on the two-way traffic study that was done as well, to hopefully enhance the drive-by, the number of drive-by trips for retail during the bridge closure, which we know from a year ago when there was a temporary closure that there was significant drop-off in retail activity downtown. And so the idea would be to set Main Street up for two-way traffic, so that a lot of traffic kind of bypasses the Main Street. Main Streets across the country that have gone back to two-way traffic from one-way traffic have significant improvement in their retail. The retail is a factor of number of trips passing by a facility. And so anyway, I don't know how many more. I think that was supposed to have gone to ODOT Monday, maybe yesterday, from the consultant to ODOT.
There have been a couple of meetings. That one I missed because we'd seen the presentation here.
Right.
But yeah, and I'm not sure about the public approval process on that. I mean, my sense is that it could very well, we could ask them to come to this commission as well and present their, I see where there's some benefits to it, and I'm guessing there's some downfalls to that too. That, the objective is to get people to slow down and stop in downtown. If you just don't want to do that, then, you might not like the two-way plan. But
Or you can go around.
Right.
So.
And we still have a lot of citizens that remember when it was a two-way downtown, and when we were convinced that the thing to do was to make it one way.
That was brought up during one of the public hearings, and most towns that have decided to go to the one way have seen the benefit of going back to the two way. If you're trying to enhance the benefit of your downtown for retail, because it has a traffic calming effect for one thing, and then it really does improve the amount of trips by a place. So, anyway. In some downtowns across the country, they did worse than one way. They actually closed their downtowns and just had pedestrian and bicycle traffic. And many of those, in the articles I've read, it almost killed their downtowns because they had no, the retail had no visibility. So anyway, the consultants that were hired by ODOT are recommending the two-way traffic and show traffic counts after the bridge closes going down as low as like 3,000 and increasing with two-way traffic to like 5,000. So it's a significant positive to retail. And obviously we're going to see a 2-year closure, which is going to have some impact. We know it's going to have the impact because we had a 3-week trial of it a year ago.
Is it a 5,000 with the closure or after?
Well, no, it was a two-way after the closure.
So I haven't been tracking, I don't know if Kathy knows what that process or what the meeting dates are, but do you have any, I haven't been tracking that close enough to know when it's going before, the open house you talked about?
Well, we had the open house. I think the next thing we'll have to go to the city commission, depending on whatever ODOT, we're asking ODOT for some dollars, to do that, so. Because it'll be things like restriping and, there'll be a loss of 20 parking spots, but in redoing the parking downtown, when they go about doing this, they think they're gonna gain back 22, so it'll be a net gain of 2. Obviously, nobody would want to lose any parking. So, anyway, I don't want to take a lot of time, but I just wanted you all to be aware of it. And you should have been noticed. Were you noticed for the public hearing? No?
I don't remember seeing anything.
Okay. Well, maybe Kathy, if it gets on the city commission agenda, we'll at least let the TAC know that if it doesn't come here, I don't know. I'm not in charge of how that all happens, but I think, is it Nancy that's leading the, yeah.
Are we on the downtown parking committee? Is that the item you guys have gotten to?
Well, we actually were just at 99 Tunnel, past the downtown parking. We skipped Pearl waiting for you.
One thing I wanted to mention, something I noticed, and I don't know if maybe Jonathan or Scott knows something about it, but the city of Canby, they're very actively looking at changing their downtown from two-way to one-way. And you can go to their website, you can make comments and things like that.
Interesting. Okay, did you have anything you wanted to add about the tunnel? Or we're just waiting to hear back from ODOT?
Yeah, I think that's about it. My sense is that they know we're out there. There's a lot of irons in the fire, I think, for Oregon City with ODOT. And I'm not sure if they're tired of hearing it from us, but my sense is that they're trying to prioritize some of those things. And this is one that's probably not at the top of their list. And I think we need to be respectful of that. I think there is a lot going on downtown. And so, yeah, that's all I got to add.
We want it all done now is not the right attitude.
Not a way to make friends.
Yeah. I feel sorry for Canby every time I drive through their little town. That place is real.
Okay, so we're gonna back up to Pearl Street traffic concerns.
So, we didn't include the traffic counts because we didn't have those, right?
They
They
have
are
them,
now added, so
Okay.
if you
and you have a copy.
touch it, it will
So, this group directed staff to go ahead and get those traffic counts. And so there's two sets here. There's one for Pearl and there's one for Hazelwood Drive.
And I added Hazelwood to the end of the agenda.
Okay. So Pearl, again, I was pretty surprised at the 85 percentile speeds. I did get some clarification on some of the speeds that were very, very excessive, just to confirm that those counts are flawed, and more likely the road is so narrow on Pearl that they use the way they set the counts out. If a vehicle is going kind of the opposite direction at the same time and they cross the tubes at the same time, that's how some of that counting may have been offset. But at least that's the thought of the technician that did the study.
And you know how to look at the counts if you wanted to look at that document, everybody? Okay, just want to make sure if you want to look at it.
Is this the first one?
Pearl Street, and the restriping is a big improvement.
Yes.
That is needed. That is wonderful. Really
I
hard.
thought that helped. It's narrowed it, and we narrowed the striping, and we to 4-inch gap, moved it over a little bit, a couple of spots.
It feels so much different. It really has helped a lot in the park. I hope that the people that there and use it are happier as well.
I haven't heard any feedback on that. Whether I guess if they like that better than what it was. Whether they're happy or not is another question. So anyway, looking at this data, we took this data after school started. So this that was another thing I was reminded of by our technician, we typically don't do traffic counts during the summer season because we don't have school traffic. So he started this right after school started. The 85 percentile runs in, to me, the high 29s. I'm trying to remember, I looked at both of these just a little bit. Like mostly in that 29 mile an hour range, which seems, that does seem very fast for that low roadway. And so what do we do with that? I'm not sure other than his classification. We probably could look at doing some kind of traffic control in terms of, if the neighborhood were coming to us and wanting to do some kind of a speed bump or speed hump. But other than that, we've just got, we can share this information with our police department, but that doesn't always necessarily, Lisa Nunes lives at the bottom of the hill there, I noticed, and so I don't know how aware she is of that at all, but my guess is she probably knows that there's some speeding going on there, but I don't know, this was just kind of, we've made some decisions on what to do with the roadway there, we've implemented those. This was kind of an afterthought, but we should still go ahead and complete the traffic study, so we've done that, and I guess I'd look for any further direction from the committee about what maybe we do with that.
I have a question on the date where it says like 9/19. Was that the date the study was done?
The study happened over a period of several days from 9/14 to 9/19.
Okay.
So we did traffic counts on all those days. But these are daily totals. I guess I jumped to the conclusion that these kind of things have been presented to the committee before, and if that's
I was just curious because the 19th is a Sunday.
oh right, yeah. So we collected several days worth of
If you
data.
look at the top right, it says date, and each of these pages represents a different date, 9/14, 9/15, 9/16. So he usually does it in like 4 to 5 days in a row. And if you look at there's volume counts, are right here. So the volume for the day, and then it's on the left-hand side, that second column, like the first page, the volume was 291, and the 85th percentile speeds were 29.9 miles per hour.
They weren't very different from day to day, that 85th percentile.
No, they stayed pretty much the same.
Saturday, there's a lot more traffic on there.
And there's also eastbound and westbound counts.
Friday, double the count. Wait, Thursday was.
Friday was the 17th.
You can see westbound, the counts are much, much higher.
And out in the street in a neighborhood, the number of cars that are going 70 miles an hour or more, there's a lot of those.
I think I was explaining that might be a fluke of 2 cars passing same time as that.
Yeah, the high speeds, I would throw those out. I don't think they're accurate. Yeah, but the technician that installed them sent me an email because I asked him about that. Says basically since Pro freezes so narrow, I had to use one set of tubes for both directions. Normally, I use one set of tubes per each direction of travel. 2 cars are crossing the tubes at the same time. There's a chance that it may read an inaccurate speed. Software that processes the data uses algorithms that should notice those anomalies and filter them out. But looking at the speeds on the studies, there are not many people going over 40 miles per hour. And then it jumps to a few people over 70 to 99 miles per hour. So I think he's just discounting those as probably inaccuracies of the way we collected the data, which was good to hear. I hadn't really looked at the totals. So there's the 14th through the 19th for eastbound, and then there's several more pages. It would looks like 6 pages of the westbound data. So 6 days worth of data. Yeah, Kathy's right. I hadn't noticed that the traffic counts
Westbound.
for westbound are significantly higher, which I think kind of makes sense because there's no, you can come down Malala and turn and not have any cross traffic to have to deal with necessarily at both Division and Malala. If you're coming, eastbound, no. If
You're going westbound.
so this is the direction westbound. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So that's opposite of what I was saying.
No, that's right.
We're going westbound.
You're headed towards Malala Avenue.
And you're headed toward, and you'd have to cross 2 lanes.
You
You'd have to cross
to get that traffic light.
Yeah,
Right. Division. I mean, that's why that's a
That's the
bypass.
cut-through traffic.
Right.
Yeah, but I was thinking it was the other way because coming down Malala and turning onto Pearl and then turning onto Division are just right-hand turns, whereas if you're coming the other way, you have to make left-hand turns and you have to cross.
From the hospital though.
Right.
And from the medical facility,
Mhm.
several,
Yeah.
medical, auxiliary offices like the eye clinic and.
I was thinking if it's coming from there, it doesn't have to get there too, but it really doesn't make sense to me that it would be that way, but it is, bigger numbers, so.
I think it is to support the improving that intersection at Fifth and Malala, so people can get out of there, would give people just a natural inclination to come back through that area the same way they went, as opposed to coming up through that little neighborhood.
At Division and Malala, there, but is that what you're talking about, for the roundabout?
Yes.
And called for?
Have we tried has the police department put up the speed limit sign? Is there room anywhere along there to do that? Has that been effective in the past?
I think it has. It works for most people. I mean, those speed limit signs, those portable speed limit signs, for most people, I think they see them and obey them. We did put them on Division,
both of
and we had them on, now they're on High Street, Washington Street.
We would have tried down there.
It works for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a reminder.
It's probably not legal, but it'd be pretty cool to say, radar enforced, things so people when they see it think that they just got a ticket instead.
How about a cardboard, over the radar gun? They say that even those are really effective too.
Funny, I got a new little Ford Escort hybrid, and it's kind of a cool looking little. Have you seen the Ford hybrids? They're kind of nice looking, but with that Oregon City emblem on it, and the fact that it's a new car, I get a lot of people looking at me, and I think they think I'm a patrolman. Yeah, so everybody slows down.
I don't know, would it make sense to contact the neighborhood or the people that worked here before and interest in
One thing to note is that in order to qualify, speeds have to, 85th percentile speeds have to be 30 miles per hour. Yeah, they're a smidge below. However, that being said, Nancy made an executive decision, and she told Frontier Parkway residents who've been very actively contacting us about Frontier Parkway. They had 29-mile-an-hour counts, and she said if they came up with the money, she would allow the speed bumps. But the same thing would happen for Pearl. The neighborhood needs to come up with the funding.
Before we install speed bumps, do we get our emergency services involved in the discussion and get their input?
I haven't been through that process, but definitely, I think typically you would.
Well, we have a policy now. I don't remember the policy required that. But we could.
And we had a brochure that was made up,
Right.
it was just, if you want this, these are the steps you have to go through. Do I remember the steps?
Out there, or?
Some of the concern was some of the way to kind of counter the whole emergency services was the humps as opposed to the bumps. So the humps are more emergency service.
Also have,
Or the other thing I would say is, I would, even in an emergency, that road is narrow enough to where emergency services should definitely think about driving slower on that piece of highway anyway, so. That's,
If I were driving an ambulance, I'd go to Division. If you were coming down the Lala, I don't think you'd make, there's so many turns, that wouldn't be a good, high speed unless you were going to someplace on that road. I would think a fire truck or an ambulance would go down to Division and turn that way because it's more direct.
I just didn't know the process was here and wanted to make sure that they were included in the discussion.
yeah, David, I haven't been through that process yet to know, figure that out.
we developed the policy. Nobody's met the criteria or come up with the funding yet, but we would be sure to keep them involved.
I have heard about, from people that I've talked to, that they feel like the criteria is too hard to meet. They feel like that's, so I don't know if I haven't checked our criteria compared to other agencies'
Well,
criteria.
we took
We
our,
modeled it
we,
after
yeah, exactly.
Off of who?
Yeah.
like Oswego, who does use an emergency services speed bump standard detail, one where they can straddle without hitting the speed bumps. And ironically, the gentleman who lives on Frontier Parkway, who's been very vocal about wanting speed bumps, is a fireman.
Well, there are speed bumps on Filbert by John McLaughlin.
We have them in park places.
Yeah, they actually went through the study. I do remember having to get them installed. I wasn't on this committee, so I didn't go through that process necessarily, but I do remember they paid, I think they paid for at least one of those.
The
speed bumps.
developer was required to pay for some, and the city paid for some.
That's the new one. The new
Oh, that's
one.
the new
Yeah,
development?
your Frontier, were you off of, did you say Filbert?
Yeah, Filbert by John
Yeah.
McLaughlin.
Those are older ones.
Right.
Yeah. But
So-
yeah.
Moving on, I think, Nancy, that some of the discussions that we have had in recommending to the neighborhood to consider humps or bumps would be we just spent the summer and restriped the street. We can put the speed sign up there and give it some time for things to calm down and see if that doesn't help, rather than trying to change too many things too fast, and then you don't know if you've really helped or if you're hurting.
That's a good point. One thing I support what Nancy's saying from the perspective that we ought to at least give them a note, reminding them of what we've done, especially if we're going to do the speed sign, or if we're going to do if the police will, or we're going to put out the sign, and that we've restriped, and it doesn't have to ask them to do anything, but just to let them know that we listened to what they said, and
Mm-hmm.
Here's some things we're trying, So.
I like that. Sound good to everybody?
Yes.
I think there's another letter that we committed to doing that. I don't know if you got anywhere with it, but we were talking about needing to do it. Kathy and I were talking about who committed to this, you or me. But it was the letter to the owner of the 221 Malala, so the corner business here, when we were talking about on-street parking, and the fact that it was so narrow through there. And that's in our notes indicating that we were gonna send something, and we haven't done that. Kathy did call Tony and try and, figure out who that letter should go to, and whether we had much in the way of authority of asking, and I think the response was, well, you probably ought to send the letter to me, and no, I don't really think we have authority to enforce, development code after the development's been there for, that many years. So that's back to the question that you had, Don, which was how much teeth does our code have on requiring these businesses to stick to their parking requirements? There was other little point that Tony made, and I don't know if I can express it properly, but he was basically saying storing vehicles in the parking lots that are used on a daily basis isn't necessarily storage of vehicles. Is that right? Is that kind of?
Right.
So it would be different if those vehicles were stored there for weeks without use, as opposed to a vehicle that's kind of used on a daily basis and just parked there. It's not really. So there's a fine line there that I don't really know how he came to that.
Well, the interesting part of that is it definitely creates conflict, because the people that are gonna drive those out of the lot have to drive into the lot to come to work. So, for some point in time at least, there's not enough parking, which would mean that people would park in the street. Because until they've gone to work and then gone out in the other vehicles.
The other point that Tony keeps making, and I've heard it from others in other staff, is that if contemplated this concern is there's concern for speed on that street, right? Taking parked vehicles off the street doesn't necessarily improve the speeding problem. It hurts the speeding problem. And so, Tony's kind of point was, well, what's the point? That you're worried about speed, and yeah, we've got this parking issue, but doesn't that help your speeding problem? It slows people down before the intersection. And I think he's right.
What would the speed be if there weren't cars there then?
Right, it'd be worse. Right? So,
Wow.
And the empty lots behind the building are zoned residential. So it's been brought up that, hey, somebody should point out that those lots are up for sale and the price has been reduced. They're zoned residential. They can't be used by that developer. It's another.
but I think it wouldn't take much of a letter to send to the property owners. That seems like an easier letter to write than I'm not even sure we want to follow through on our commitment to write a letter to the developer unless you really feel strongly about that of the building at 221 Malala. The letter to the neighborhood seems fairly easy to write, and provision of this has been on our agenda for the last so many meetings. Here's what we've done. We're interested in your feedback. We're gonna, and we can. We just moved the speed signs that we have. There's still the police department's trailer is another option. They've got it parked out on High Street right now, which was a request of the McLaughlin neighborhood. So, we could make that another location where we install a permanent foundation, if you will, for our portable speed signs, and just kind of get them in the rotation. Because right now we've got maybe 4 or 5 places, different streets where we've been installing those, so we can just continue to do that with and add them to the list.
I know you guys probably want to go home after, but would it help if, maybe, how can it stay?
Another idea I was thinking of was that Betty Mum is a member of that neighborhood association. Well, I'm wondering about having her relay the information. Is that a...
She's the one that first brought it, wasn't she?
Right. They went to her. So if we give her the information, she can disseminate it. And
You okay with that?
Whatever works best for everybody. I think it would be helpful, to just, relate back to the neighborhood and then let them know that, these are the things we've done and anticipate doing, and that it should hopefully let us know, if we continue, ongoing concerns. might be the case that we could take it off of our agenda, if they're relatively satisfied with the current condition, knowing that there's only so much we can do,
Mhm.
and, that we're our ability, and that they would have to initiate something, further, if they expect us to do more.
Okay,
Much
we'll
of
get
that
the
will be in the
information to Betty.
Kathy, how much of that do you think will be in the minutes?
It's all in there.
Okay.
Are you ready? Beaver Creek Road School Speed Zone.
Second here. So, that's been on our agenda for a long time, and I think we had, talked through that several times. We actually, I'm trying to remember, at our last meeting, had we been to the state, review board a second time? And we actually had a meeting with the state review board, and, their decision was that, we'd gone back to the state and asked for a 35-mile-an-hour zone, and they denied that request, but they kind of reaffirmed the 40-mile-an-hour zone, and it's posted 45. So the state order will, it'll be 35 up to about 800 feet north of Loader Road. You know Loader Road? You know where Loader Road is? There. So their order was to,
Isn't that the road that goes down to the golf course?
Loader Road is there's a long dead-end road that goes out, it's just before you get to the airport.
Oh,
Or
okay.
the airport, the airstrip.
Excuse me, I got a technical question here. I'm getting a message saying out of range to operate at this resolution, the LCD damage.
It says that on every single one.
Okay, so don't worry about it.
The city recorder saw it do it and never said anything, so I'm not gonna worry about it.
So what I've got up on the screen here, can you see on your screen?
Yeah, they can view it on here, John, on the monitor.
So this, sort of really, it's just about halfway between the college entrance and Loader Road is where the 40-mile-an-hour starts, and it stays 40 miles an hour all the way to the city limits. So it's like 300 feet past Glen Oak Road, which is really, I guess, halfway between the city limits and Glen Oak Road. So we're going to re-sign that to 40 miles an hour. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing that the state said was, that this whole question about the speed zone or the school zone within that, in front of the high school there's really not the pedestrian activity there that we want us to do. And the state was, pretty adamant about that. Joe Merrick, which is the county traffic engineer, and I both went before the state in Salem, and I had not done it. Joe indicated he had not done it. At least he hadn't done it in many years. But state traffic engineer, and there was state police officer there, two different agency people. I can't remember who all was on that committee, but they were all experienced with transportation issues. And they were. I felt a little bit like we were being scolded about that, leaving that school zone in, because we were advocating for leaving that school zone in. We continue to advocate for that. Because the school, the school district wants. We think it's on the edge of being warranted. We think this development happens out there. It's going to become, it's going to be bad as a school zone at some time anyway. We pull that out. So it was good to hear the state. I wish the school district had been there to hear the state, because they were definitely saying that, school zones are for pedestrians. They're not for young drivers, right? And that's the school's deal. We're saving young teenagers' lives because they're young, new drivers, and new slow drivers. So Joe Merrick has been pushing really hard, and I think we've got commitment. We do have commitment from the schools, just throughout the school action plan. And the other point is, we'll get the school zone. If you do that, and you go through a process, which is, I think, really about encouraging high school kids, right, to walk to school. That's the big kind of push that comes out of these safe routes to school programs. Yes, it's also about making sure they've got safe routes to use, but it's trying to encourage families and kids to walk and bike to school. And that's really what Joe wants. He also doesn't want to have, whatever 20 others or how many other school districts he has to answer to. Just set a precedent.
I don't think you can use those dollars for a high school. Safe routes to school dollars.
We're not talking, not grant dollars, it's just
Oh,
the
okay.
plan itself. So yes, the school district would have to come up with the funding for that. And we're, adamant about wanting an engineering study, or an engineering design for the flashing signal. So we're working through it right now. I'm drafting an agreement with the school district. So the city would still be contracting with the consultant to design that signal system. It's probably going to be a free signal system, flashing signal system. Probably going to be solar powered flashing signal system. But the idea would be is they would go through that process, and in that process, the committee would come up with the recommendation. If it didn't, then all of a sudden that got another little problem there. Joe felt confident, having been through that several times, that it's not likely to be approved. And Marion has agreed to sit on that process requires some meetings with a team of people that are and Mary's from this committee, and there's also John Dingwall from and I'll be in that group as well.
You really think that it meets warrants?
I think that it would meet projected warrants.
Yeah, that's what scares me a little bit, is building something to meet projected warrants, because people are going to start saying, why am I doing this behavior? And they're going to ignore it, and then they could start developing a habit, and maybe when it meets warrants, they give it further consideration. I just have a worry of installing a facility that doesn't meet warrants, because people are going to say, why is this here? And the speeds are going to stay the same, and they're going to ignore it. That's why we have warrants.
There's, that's been the toughest part of this, is trying to advocate for something that both Joe and I recognize doesn't necessarily mean. But the flip side of that, he's been pushing this with Keith for years. And I think the public outcry that we're going to have, and it's already been kind of threatened that way, we will have problems fighting that battle in a public way. And so, to me, the idea is you go ahead and encourage and try and get safe, more pedestrian traffic through that school zone, and understand how that magic would play out. That's something Joe's kind of convinced me will happen. But that's where we're at. And I think the county holds the cards on that signing. We're going to leave all the school zone stuff pretty much as is posted. We'll repost the speed limit, but the school zone itself isn't going to change. So we can do that.
If we were to do something like that, I think we might want to consider trying to increase enforcement there. We want to enforce behavior, desired behavior, and we're going to be putting in facilities to let people know, I think, and if it doesn't meet warrants, it's got to be that extra step. So increased enforcement would be that extra step. Something to consider.
Update on that. So expect new 40-mile-an-hour signs out there real soon.
Okay, and moving on, bicycle safety treatments, which was something that Nancy was going to address. And according to the agenda, she has, Dawn and I are going to address this at this point. We went to a webinar that the city invited us to on the new standards, the federal standards for the municipal, I'm going to get this wrong, traffic control devices.
WTCD.
Yeah.
I know what that is.
And there was a lot of interesting information presented, and one of the things that they were talking about and showed were the reflectors that we talked about last time that are being used in a number of different things that are being used for bicycle safety, which was one of the things that we had talked about looking into because they're inexpensive. To me, it was really interesting to see the pictures as to see how well, I'm a very visual person, so talking to me isn't really helpful. But to see the pictures of the curbs lit up at night where when people are riding a bicycle and they tend to have their heads down, it's more in the line of sight as opposed to a sign that's standing up that you're just going to run into the hole. So to me, it was a confirmation of our last conversation that those are an excellent tool.
One of the interesting things in the consultant for the two-way traffic on Main Street showed the blending of bicycles together with the traffic and some decals that actually go on the pavement that let drivers know that they're sharing the road. Because when you have the two-way traffic, there won't be a place off to the side for the bicycles. It'll be, the speed limit is such that bicycles can move along within the flow of traffic. The same thing on the bridge, you know, when bicycles come across the bridge. So, but there are some designations that let drivers know that and let bicycles know that they're share the road. So.
Cheryl.
Yeah.
Does anyone, Jonathan, do you have any kind of experience in the learning aspect of that for the drivers?
No, I don't. But Roger,
Learning drivers?
I mean, maybe we could have staff contact Roger Geller at Portland. He probably have some information.
I think I was going to do that, and I dropped the ball. I apologize.
Geller?
Regarding,
Information on Sharas and private
Oh.
education and
somebody just asked us about that and I had to look that up.
Now they're a legend that we can get pretty readily. I mean, they're readily available like any bicycle legend. I don't know how many agencies are using, but I see them all over now. They're pretty. You know, the biggest deal with, to be quite honest with you, the biggest deal with these legends is they're not just paint. They can be just paint. I mean, you can just paint them, but the paint doesn't last very long. So typically we'll get those in a thermoplastic legend, and you know, a bike legend, for instance, is about $850. And so they're spendy. That's not to say that we shouldn't put them out. We're actually wanting to. They're not overly difficult to install. So like this summer, we did a lot of our own thermoplastic stop bars and a couple of turn arrows. We've been doing some of those using summer seasonals, and we'll do it. You know, early morning. They get out there, 4 a.m. and they start torching these things down because they put them down with heat. And but it's still a newer expense that we haven't incurred a lot of. We've usually relied on either a capital project like Warner Milne or something to put those things in, and then they just get worn and they tend to almost outlive the life of the pavement. And but I've talked to our crew about doing more of those kind of things, getting a better inventory of where what our legend liability really is, because I think it's pretty big between turn arrows and stop bars and bike legends. It's significant, and we don't really have a good way of even, other than maybe our own observation of those as we're driving around town, if we're focused on those things. That's kind of how we're, that arrow needs to be replaced, I better get that thing replaced. That's how we've been dealing with that, as opposed to a more comprehensive kind of evaluation and then kind of recommendation on how many arrows should we include in our budget this year, what they're spending.
Is that budgeted as a part of the payment and maintenance utility fund, or does that come from a different budget?
No, it does not. We do, for instance, a new project that was paid for out of the utility maintenance fee would pay for that. But typically it comes out of our striping budget, which is paid out of gas taxes. And so we are doing some, this is off topic, but we've just completed an inventory, a mapping of all our long line striping. So we've got that in both a spreadsheet form. It lists links and how much 8-inch white stripe, how much 4-inch yellow stripe. They did some field work and they did some aerial mapping review, and they've got all that mapped out now. Skip lines, how much is, we're a transitional lane where you cross a bike lane, for instance, how much skip line do we have? And that's pretty big. I mean, we haven't done that for years, and the idea would be we could get a lot more progressive hotel in the county. What we really want to have restripe that next season, as opposed to just driving around going, here's a list, go do this. So I think that's good. But what we haven't done is done the legend inventory yet. So
if these legends last longer, is there any kind of data that says that we could use to compare that we have to repaint this every year or every 2 years, and that's costing us $300, but if we put this legend down, it's $850, but it lasts for 10 years. Is there any kind of comparisons? And it really could end up being cost effective to invest in those things.
Well, I think for us it is, because to be quite honest with you, the paint, especially if it's in the travel lane, we just can't keep on top of it enough, and what we end up being is out of compliance. And so, just the labor involved in kind of putting those. I know that it's better for us to use thermoplastic on those kind of things, especially if they're in a travel lane. Bike legends, there's not a lot of traffic on a bike legend typically, so if placed properly. So, painting bike legends probably is more effective than, say, a turn arrow that's right in a travel lane, South Second or something like that. That wouldn't be worth painting at all. It'd be gone in less than a month.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. There may be studies out there. I'm not sure, but I think I'm convinced that thermoplastic is the way to go. It's just expensive. At $800 a pop, when we've got, I can't remember, our striping budget is, I want to say around $50,000. So it goes quick.
Okay, if that is everything, we'll move on to the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association's concerns. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the letter? It kind of comes down to a couple of things. Requesting a 4-way stop at 6th and John Adams, where the stop signs currently give the through traffic down 6th. And then the second request is to repaint the crosswalk at 6th and Jefferson, and then to put in a crosswalk at 6th and John Adams. And their concern here is that with the library moving back into the Carnegie building, that has had a significant impact.
John Adams, to where?
They want the 4-way stop at John Adams and 6th.
So, I didn't realize this was going to be on the agenda, but this 6th and Jefferson, Nancy and I talked about just striping that one. That makes pretty good sense. The other one, I think also makes sense, but Nancy wanted to dovetail that with, there's another issue on 7th and John Adams with regard to pedestrian safety and crossings, pedestrian crossing across 7th Street right there. There's a curb extension there, where where I'm talking about is where the new, or the old art piece just recently went back in place. It's the two bodies kind of looking up in the air. That's Singer Hill Cafe is there. Ancient Voices, there we go. So anyway, there's been a lot of discussion from, I think now includes the library director, it's include the owners of Singer Hill Cafe, and probably others I can't recall now, but there's a desire to put something in place there to make it safer for pedestrians to cross. So that combined with this one, which is a block away, Nancy was talking about having a little engineering study done for that, just to get a engineered recommendation for what we might do there.
I know I've read this information, but there's a couple of things that confuse me here. One, they were talking in here about a tot park, and this crossing from the library to the tot park. Where did I read that at? In the 3rd paragraph.
The top park is really diagonally across from the Carnegie property. Have you seen that top park parcel?
No, is that where they tore down the old building that used to be a daycare center? That little house?
It's across the street from that.
It's behind the church, so?
Right. The green, 802.
Do you
Oh, I had no idea there was a park in there.
Do you understand the orientation of that drawing?
Okay.
At the top is Carnegie Center. You see the it's not a pool, it's a spray park, or defunct spray park now. You see that? And then, 802 is on the other corner. The building that just got torn down is 718.
Just here.
Just across the street there,
Okay,
And
and
what they would like is, see, there's 2 crosswalks right now. They'd like all 4 striped. So we will do that. That was that intersection was the one that, talking over with Nancy, she just said that. Let's go ahead and stripe that one.
okay.
So it's this intersection here that they've also requested that Nancy wanted to include in the study. Crosswalk question at 7.
And how long is the library going to be in this location? Are we going to create a permanent solution for a temporary problem?
I don't know. I mean, the thinking on the library or the Carnegie Centers in the city has to we have a decision on that. Those buildings have public events there, so that.
Well, certainly putting in the crosswalks, painting makes sense. And I guess the traffic study would address whether or not it makes sense to make this a four-way stop. Okay. Because that traffic is going to change dramatically, even though this is a public building and will always be used for public events. The use of it changed dramatically when they took the library out of there. And of course, then we would expect it to change dramatically when they put it back in, but this is a temporary use.
Yeah, I think you see the striking there, Sixth and, it had a crosswalk there. I
Mhm.
think, just kind of allowed us, some of these intersections, I gotta be honest with you, I don't necessarily think that the striping, is warranted just because of travel speeds and, it's kind of like, well, why are we, I don't even need that, but, so again, I tend up getting beat up pretty heavily over that. in some groups, because-
Well, and again, it made sense when that was the library, you had that active functioning pool there, and you had a lot of activity down there. But that was when my kids were in grade school. They're adults now. And again, the library being there and the basis of the argument is a temporary situation. But we're gonna do a study that works.
We're also gonna paint crosswalks.
It'd be interesting to know what the pedestrian counts are. It could be the perceived perception of just how pedestrian activity there, and there's not.
Besides that area, the Seventh and John Adams, are they considering crosswalks in that area then also?
And John Adams has been suggested several times that it should be striped as a crosswalk. We've opposed that for the most part. But, there's a lot of design effort went into 7th Street. And, good. We've not had, pedestrian incidents there. Some people swear that, they just can't cross the street there because it's too dangerous. And,
I just start stepping out and cars stop.
there's a traffic light also.
I've been there many times as a pedestrian and a driver. I understand that, there are bunches of cars that come through, and particularly if, when the train, there'll be a line of cars coming up. But some traffic.
I tend to think that quite often people that are really vocal about wanting a crosswalk have this perception that a crosswalk can protect them. And quite often an unmarked crosswalk can be safer because the pedestrian's taking more responsibility because he realizes there's not a crosswalk here. Maybe that's why you're not having any incidences there, because the pedestrians are recognizing that, hey, I gotta be careful crossing here. And quite often a pedestrian gets in a marked crosswalk and they're not paying attention. It's unprotected and they're oblivious to what's going on. So
The biggest problems is, I guess, maybe drivers just not being aware that you have to stop, and which is one of the reasons why all these jurisdictions are doing, including Oregon City, are doing pedestrian stings. And now that we've moved down to City Hall, you can wait for 20 cars, nobody will stop. They'll see you, they won't stop. But it's a driver problem. It's not, misinformation or what. No.
Yeah. I've kind of moved personally from what I think is necessary to what, I think staff have gotten beat up pretty heavily on some of these pedestrian and traffic safety issues where, whether it's warranted or not, people still feel like it's necessary because of their perception. And, I've had conversations with Nancy many times. We're going to get beat up on that every single time. And, part of that is part of the job, I guess, but sometimes it's not, it's not overly friendly You know?
And what do you think, Nancy?
Well, and part of this particular one may be a trade-off for a neighborhood that feels like they had that library dumped on them. Well, maybe that's not the right word. I mean,
that's true. I think that they actually did police stuff on it.
really. Well, I thought there was objections about, because didn't they require the city to go through an environmental thing on that?
They don't like City Hall. Oh, there were some objections to that.
You know, I just, I agree with a lot of what's being said in this room about, you know, being a little more cautious about providing warrant for a crosswalk. That I can tell you right now, the traffic, the pedestrian count on that probably wouldn't warrant striping, but we have, first of all, we have a letter from the neighborhood requesting it. That may typically weighs a little heavier than just one particular person getting a request from the neighborhood. And I think Nancy's even pushing back on that with saying, well, we'll take care of this one intersection, and I think that's got to do with the fact that there's a park on one corner. I don't know if it's going to be a daycare center, but there was a daycare center there and the Carnegie Center. And between those three corners, it's more likely to have more pedestrian use.
And I take with a grain of salt the letter from the neighborhood association. I don't know if it's a really active neighborhood association.
Well, it's
This one is,
This one is 4 or 5 people that showed up in a room.
no, that is the premier.
Okay, but I need you to know that. I don't know if I was listening to this.
It is. I think we've got like 4 commissioners that come from that neighborhood association. That's pretty active. It's so, you know, and that's good. I mean, I think a lot of these kinds of things are the kind of services that local governments need to provide. But
I think if we weren't going to put in a crosswalk, that a visit to a neighbor association meeting might be warranted to say, this is why we're not, and just being responsive to the requests instead of just pushing them aside and saying, no, we're not going to get it. But if you went to the meeting, I want to put more hours on you, but I know you want the overtime. But I think they took the time to write the letter, and I think being responsive to them is important.
well, but I think we are being responsive. We're already gonna put in the striping on Sixth and Jefferson and do a study for the other 2 corners. In the process of doing the study, I'd like to look at options for the 4-way stop, taking into consideration that this is a temporary situation, it's not permanent. And when the situation changes, then the dynamics change again. Because we've seen this town have the library there and not have the library there. Now it's back and we know it's going to be gone again. So, okay, TriNet ballot measure. There's some information in there about TriNet going to get on the November 2nd ballot. For your reading pleasure, does anybody want to discuss that letter? Or just read it at your leisure and decide as you will. If there's no interest in discussing it tonight, we will move on to the Metro Community Investment Strategy.
what are we doing with that one, Kathy?
That's information on you.
So this is just information for you to read, meetings that are being held. Another one tomorrow in Hillsborough. And then next week, they're having meetings again in Hillsborough and Gresham.
And also
And on to construction project updates.
So, Kathy's, that's pretty nice, because Kathy goes out and gets updates from all the project managers that are involved with these projects and tries to get a short blurb on what's going on. So that's provided here. I don't necessarily,
I don't know what happened with the formatting, sorry.
mean the bold and the non-bold, is that what you're talking about?
No, the bold is the new text, but I'm not sure why,
It didn't show up.
yeah, it's not wrapping correctly.
Question on the Holcomb project. No, I don't, this is, it's really wonderful to see the lights, but most of them are, I think it looks really, really wonderful, and the use has been outstanding, and,
Just had a tremendous impact on, positive impact on the community. So really pleased that,
it's very efficient. One thing I wanted to ask about is there's a bunch of Cobra lights that are still lit up, that are on the opposite side of the street, or I guess it would be the south side of the street, and I'm wondering if those are ever gonna get turned off or removed, because I would like to see some of those Cobra lights go away. I think that the street's overlit, and, it seems like a good opportunity to save energy, and,
You calling them?
Cobra lights.
Cobra.
To be honest with you, I haven't driven up Holcomb at night for a long. I can't remember the last time I drove up Holcomb for nights. And you also said most of the lights, the new lights are on. Does that mean that they're not all?
Well, there's a little problem because some of the utility lines are too low, so they weren't able to install,
Two of the fixtures.
two fixtures
The top.
are not installed, because they're gonna need to lift the, utility lines.
There, those are a few of the new lights that aren't working.
But they look tremendous, they're really, I think they look
Yeah,
great.
they do.
I mean, it's just,
And those
and
are,
it's so nice to drive down the street at night, it's really, really nice. And in the morning.
It's probably much nicer for the people that walk, since they used to walk on the street.
I leave my house about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I see all kinds of people getting out at that time of day, walking their dogs.
Sidewalks.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So right now there's too many lights, you think?
Yeah, I think they can turn off,
the overhead.
it's the north side, the side that has the sidewalk, I believe is the north side. So I would say that
The other side.
any place that has north lights probably can. And there's a couple of areas, I think on Hunter, they have both the Cobra light and the new fixtures. It just doesn't say that, it looks redundant to me, and it kind of takes away from the aesthetic appeal of the new lamps to have those Cobra lights out there. Any agreement with my neighbors?
Well, that isn't even on this list anyway.
No, I did get an update, but,
Is this a project that will never really end?
it's done. I think, as far as I know, the only thing that they're finishing the punch list, it said, last week. Hopefully they removed the signs I mentioned. The signs are still there. As of today.
Construction's as of tonight.
Okay, I do know that they need to install a couple of trees, and those couldn't be installed until, like October-ish.
They should need construction signs for that. The 30-mile-an-hour sign.
Nobody's paying attention to those signs.
I know. Well, some of us who do get run over by those who don't. But there's also, somebody's got temporary signs, the flagger signs. There's one all the way up by Holcomb School and one down by the Steve's Market that whoever left there the last time just left them, and they're actually, they kind of probably defeat the purpose of the flagger sign because there's no flagger, nor has there been one for 2 weeks, but there's the sign up, so.
Is it on a post?
No, they're temporary. They're like
Profit,
Oh.
eagle kind of signs that have the guy with a flag.
Okay.
Sounds like,
The car belonged to somebody.
I said something to the project manager, and he told me they're gonna be out there the next day and it would be taken care of, so I'll remind him again.
and I'll go out there. I'll tell you
It's
what.
probably a traffic calming device, 30 mile an hour. I guess it didn't calm that traffic.
I think it helped, particularly, when construction was in high gear.
No, but I mean, now it isn't.
Oh, no, I don't think it, I think.
Project signs still up, you said too?
The 30 mile an hour signs are still up, they're permanent, and there's one on either end.
I guess the ones that I'll speak to that I think might be interesting to this group is
You need to speak to all of them, because I can't read them.
Oh, you can.
Oh. Okay, that'll help.
It does help.
part of the idea, Don, was that we wouldn't have to go through these. Recognizing sometimes.
I just need a magnifying glass, that's all.
But I will say the 2010 roadway, Oregon City roadway reconstruction project, which is really Lynn and Myers, that one's kicked off. We've run into some utility conflicts that we hadn't planned for, so that's might put some things out of order and maybe result in some delays. But the biggest concern I have about that is the weather and, you know, the fact that we've got this short construction window. Between that one and the Floydville projects, they're coming up too at the end of this month. You know, the idea would be to have still some warm weather, so some of that soil seal would cure and our pavements would be dry enough to pave on. But I still have a lot of confidence that we'll be able to get it done. It's just, I have a feeling those are gonna linger a little bit. And the other project that's not listed on here, this paving project that I think we talked about, was the repaving of Beaver Creek Road from Marjorie Lane or near Berry Hill Shopping Center all the way out to beyond city limits, and that's a county project, and they decided to delay that until next summer. So, you know, there is some mindset out there that says probably don't want to pave when it's inappropriate season, and we probably won't want to do that either if the weather turns like it's kind of projected to turn. So we may have to live through a winter of kind of a mess along Leland Road, but we're asking them to, you know, because of some of the utility concerns that we're having on Leland, if we can't move the Myers Road piece ahead, so that maybe we get Myers Road from Claremont out paved and leave less of Leland for, you know, if we have the weather for it, or if not, maybe later. Was that the Redland Road? November 18th?
Yeah.
4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Second project open house, showing final plans, final design, construction documents by December 2010.
They're also scheduled to be at our Park Place Neighbors Association meeting on October 18th. One thing I learned is that I didn't realize that they're planning to do quite a bit of work for adding a lane westbound. Area that's for
Topsoil is that where they keep do the topsoil
I'm
sometimes?
talking about where Holcomb goes over 213. They're evidently gonna build up that whole area with a big granite wall. And I haven't seen the design, I think it's phase 2. How final is phase 2? Because the neighborhood is gonna have a bunch of concerns about that. And I don't recall, I missed the first open house, but I thought it was just on the phase 1, so I didn't. We'll definitely bring it up in the neighborhood meeting, but I'm wondering how fixed are they? I mean, is it too late to have?
It's all being designed. Phase 1 and phase 2 are being totally designed. At the same time, phase 1 construction is going to be done, and a portion of phase 2 construction is going to be done. So the design Yes, they're doing the design, so you're gonna wanna get your comments in.
Okay. And, so that's, when is the deadline for comments?
Well, if they're meeting with your neighborhood association and then they're having the open house, I don't know. I don't know enough about that project. So.
The open house is to show the final plans. So,
So they're planning to basically put a gigantic wall where the
Mhm.
bluff is over
Mhm.
there. It's right off of, it would be Apperson. Just where
Holcomb or down on 213, down below?
the wall is actually gonna go all the way up the hill. It's gonna be this gigantic wall that kind of goes like all entire. And I guess our neighborhood concerns would be that that area we think would be, I guess if you look at for future trail development. I don't know if there's an opportunity there to, just put it way on top of that wall if it's gonna be built.
I guess I'm a little lost, but I see your point about if we're building a wall there and you want to get beyond it with pedestrians and
Yeah, 'cause right now, I mean, you could take Apperson, but it doesn't help us get down, to the lower area. I mean, 213 is such a barrier for our neighborhood, and they're gonna, I think, get years for the design that it's gonna be getting worse.
I would contact Alita, who is the city project manager for it, and ask her what, you probably have her email.
Yeah, and we've been in contact because they
Yeah.
still want to come and present, so I just wasn't sure where they were as far as the final design.
They're getting close.
yeah, they're
Okay, so we should
Yeah.
get our comments.
Yes, yes.
Do you know whether we're getting any pushback from the community on that project? I was out of town when they had the open houses, or the last open house, or.
Well, according to Aluda, they had nobody from the neighborhood, although I did get some, from one of our neighbors.
Hmm.
He said he was at the open house, but they said nobody from the neighborhood went. Well, maybe it was very little notice, it was, I had house here, I said, well, they don't know. That was why they contacted us to see if we could get, presentation. That's, thing. I think a lot of neighbors, that live down there in housing, they don't drive, so it's hard to.
It was also, webcast. It's also available online.
Yeah, most of the people don't have,
Computers then, yeah.
recording on computers, yeah.
Right.
Okay, any other questions about construction projects? All right, moving on. The last time we met, there was a concern about the turn signal at 14th and McLaughlin, which really is a state signal. Did we check with the state on the timing of that? There was an accident down there.
14th and Washington. That's the city signal.
No, McLaughlin.
Oh,
14th and McLaughlin.
That was Don that,
Donald Belshaw.
that came and his wife had been,
Yeah.
you were gonna check that ODOT.
And we did check with ODOT, and ODOT responded to that. So there was some email correspondence about that. I think it was more than a phone call. ODOT was going to get back with Don, so they were directed specifically to him. That they didn't see it as a timing issue or any kind of glitch with their signal operation. They saw it more as a unfamiliarity with that flashing amber yellow light, and they see that not just in our town, but other places around the state. So, you make a note. I'll have to look to see if that was an email correspondence or if that was a phone conversation. But we did get back. We had the state contact.
Copies on the email react.
If it's an email, I will. So if it's a phone conversation, that would be harder to reproduce. But I know that there was
I couldn't find any follow-up.
might not have gone.
Yeah, it might not have come to me.
So if you could make, I'll make a note too. But 14th.
And maybe let Dawn know also.
Yeah, state contacted Dawn. I know that they talked to Dawn directly.
I don't need to see the email if on there, if it's been followed up with.
I'd be curious, though. It's not that, no, I wouldn't spend a lot of time, you guys are busy enough, but.
And the last item is the Hazelwood speed study.
I put that in there, just because I got a phone call from a gentleman asking about speed bumps. And so, I talked to Nancy Crouchar, and, she agreed that we would go ahead and do, traffic counts there. And, so I asked him to submit a formal request. They sent me a letter. He says that, they've been talking about speed bumps, they want to slow traffic down. He blamed it a lot on renters, the police won't come out there, et cetera, et cetera. So, so anyway, we have the traffic counts taken, and they're attached if you want to look at them. But I think you can see, and John has them right there.
Where is Hazelwood?
I'm not. Is that the Warner Parrot?
Well, I thought it was.
It's
So over here, the problem that Pearl is, we've got 800 cars on Pearl, and we've got 100 on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And their traffic, their speeds are slightly lower than they are on Pearl.
Right. Well, but it's kind of ironic because the guy who does the speed counts, he said there's no way, he was kind of pushing back on Pearl Street, there's no way the traffic counts are high there. And then he says, oh, those guys are higher than Hazelwood.
So, this is Warner Parrot. Arthur is on this end, and Hazelwood kind of connects the two. Right there, but, so this is Hazelwood, and the guy that's complaining lives in one of these homes down here. Also down, there's a gradient here, so this is the top of the hill and it slopes down through here, so since it's the curvature of that road, it's just perfect for a little speeding. The traffic counts are low. Surprisingly, I was surprised to see that. I actually also talked to him
Right here.
Yeah, we discussed this. So anyway, I guess what I kind of thought we would do is just let you know that we looked into it, and sometimes just getting the counts is enough to reassure them that speed limits are within acceptable limits or acceptable ranges, and get back to him and say he doesn't need the warrants for speed bumps unless you tell us something different.
That's what I would respond. What do you guys think? And if I remember correctly, right at the end of Hazelwood, where it comes into Barker as a three-way stop too.
The counts are very low. 100 mile an hour counts. I mean, 100 vehicle counts. 100 vehicles on the street per day.
went back to this neighborhood calming, traffic calming, why can't we just do certain things and, you know, we get more and more of these requests, and I'm guessing more and more of those will come before you. So I just thought, you know, cost isn't always the driver, but in some cases it is. And so I pulled a few items that I thought might be of interest to this group. You know, just to kind of get a sense of the cost of, say, for instance, the solar powered flashing. I guess the other thing that's been brought up is there have been other people outside of this group that have brought up a question about the flashing signs, stop signs, flashing pedestrian signs. I think I have heard it from this group as well that could we look into that. So I think they're viable options. They just have some costs associated with them that you know are significant or they're not insignificant, I guess. So the handwriting down there is just a local vendor, traffic safety supply. So this provided you some pricing. And also for that flashing head sign, also more of a mid-street kind of they're rubberized yield pedestrian sign. That's nowadays, if you remember that GCD course where anything that's out in the travel lane has to kind of be you can drive over it without too much damage to your car. So that little assembly there on this page 208 is $220 basically for that kind of facility. These recyclable speed cables. I guess on a narrow street like Pearl, we could probably get by with 2 of those, but there's shipping costs that aren't included in that price, but there's that's $1,265 each for those rubber speed humps. And then the last item probably had less interest, but just looking at these more plastic medians with delineators on them. I got a price for kind of an assembly, and I think it's about $60 a foot for that with the delineator on it and the plastic curves. So I think that's just for information. So that's nothing. Just wanted to share with you with the effort of getting it.
John, I was going to ask, we went to that presentation. Do we know when Oregon is going to adopt those federal standards, or does Oregon automatically adopt them?
I don't know.
When do we have to start looking at having a plan?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because certainly having a plan to bring our signage up to federal standards is going to have an impact on funding.
True.
Are you talking about the webinar and the UTC standard posting? I think those are still draft form right now. I don't know if they've completed them.
I got the impression that they have been approved. There will be some updates. The implementation date on the federal level is still 6 months or a year out. And then, of course, states adopt at some other rate. Scott, do you know when ODOT adopts those standards? No inside information. Okay.
No, I don't, but I mean, there's long timelines on all those. I mean, I think it's important, things like reflectivity. All our new signs that we put up are meeting the reflectivity standard. I don't see us being, if they told us we had to do that in 5 years, it would be an impact. But we're already moving on a lot of those things. On the schools, school zones, we're trying to stay ahead of the cry for, more by kind of implementing some of those things on our own. Making sure we've got the latest colors and the appropriate wording and appropriate letter sizes, those kind of things. So,
appropriate letter sizes. So some of those get old, or the appropriate letter sizes are important.
Yeah. So I don't think nothing that I saw that was too overly concerning. It was But it was just, you know, it's good to see that other agencies are using these, like the flashing signage. That's new stuff, but you're seeing it all over the place, and it's being adopted into the MUTCD. So I think those are good indicators. But I don't remember whether the state has adopted that yet or when they're planning to adopt that. I think I had that in my notes as a question too.
Okay.
It wasn't clear to me on that. And we're also showing that again, or we have access to that. So if any of you would still like to see that, it was very informative. I thought it was pretty good. It was well done. It was a couple hours, maybe 2 hours. Yeah. So you could, we could even get you. You can log in and watch it online if you wanted to, from your own computer. I can't remember if there was a login or I can't remember how we did that. I actually didn't do it. Somebody else did it for me.
There's a way to do it.
But there's
Yeah.
a way to do it. So if you're interested in that, let me know.
Yeah, and we're having, we're replaying the webinar on Monday at City Hall.
Remember what time?
It's in the morning, but if anybody wanted to know, I can forward that to you. I'll just forward it anyway.
There you go. Okay, any other questions, concerns? That's the last of our agenda.
I had something, but I don't have it well formulated. It's just a thought that I asked for the bylaws for the Transportation Advisory Committee because I kind of got I've been with, I don't know, 5 or 6 meetings here now, and still kind of trying to better understand what the overall goal and desire of this group is to do. And I think, you know, we're here to support, but I also find ourselves at meeting time trying to, okay, what should we have on the agenda? I'm not 100% certain I know where, you know, where this group wants to go, what's you know, important in terms of accomplishments for this group. I know that there's, I would like to see kind of more input on the safe routes to school, because I think the neighborhoods are going to be demanding that anyway, and I'd rather us be at least a little bit ahead of that request. I just sense that it's coming, because I think the school district, they've talked a little bit about, while they didn't want to do the high school safe routes to school program first, they had King School in mind, they had Mount Pleasant in mind. So, you know, we've not talked about safe routes to school. There is a fair amount of commitment there. Is it, you know, is there some kind of a working work session that we want to start looking at kind of those areas? Do we want to take a school route and just kind of walk it and be prepared to talk about it the next time? That's one, you know, question that I have. I mean, looking at the bylaws, the things that we probably should be focused on are definitely when people bring concerns to this group, but there's some bigger picture thinking there that really probably we ought to be looking at. And I know the transportation or the high capacity transit's one of those. So I know that we committed to getting unions during the summer. It didn't work out. It didn't work out for me to kind of get those things together, but that's still something that's on the, I haven't lost track of that, so we're still working that together. You know, I don't know. I don't know if the last time it was that you guys reviewed the bylaws, just to figure out if that's something that we would want to, you know, maybe have a, you know, a little visioning for this year. What do we want to do this year, right? We're kind of starting over. We took a break in the summer, so what do we want to do? And that's something that probably...
And that's an excellent idea. Actually, we rewrote those bylaws not this summer, but just last summer. And so they have been recently gone through. I do believe copies were provided to everybody.
You prepared them.
Yeah.
Well,
You could redo them.
They're great bylaws. They're good bylaws. I read them.
I wasn't quite all there, but
They're, I didn't see anything wrong with them. It was just kind of based on the content that I had seen, and there were some things that were, you know, it seemed like, yeah, that's exactly what we've been talking about. Other areas where I was kind of like, well, I'm not so sure. And I realized this group has to be reactionary to whatever comes through the doors too, or whatever comes via email.
to some extent, you kind of have to look forward also. And we've got the transportation plan that needs to be rewritten that we have been talking about for several years, but then there's the whole kind of hierarchy of we can't get to ours till somebody else finishes theirs, they're not finished with theirs, so we kind of keep passing that off every year. I was hoping that we were going to at least get started on it this year. I don't know where we're at budget-wise or in Nancy's plan with getting that done. Pardon me?
I heard January last.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nancy spoke to that a little bit, and it was, I didn't remember January, but it would seem like six months out.
Didn't we get funding?
I haven't heard of any funding for
We
that.
applied for a grant. I thought we got funding to help.
That would be a good update if we did. That'd be a positive update to have. I hadn't heard that.
One thing you had mentioned was safe routes to school, and I think that's really important, not just for the kids, but for the whole community. It provides a pedestrian environment and a bicycling environment. And have you had a dialogue with the school district? Are they interested in partnering on the elementary and middle school level so that we can start getting some action plan teams on the ground so that we can apply for state dollars?
The communication that I've had with them is through their operations manager, who's putting together this high school route, safe routes to school program. And we told them that we would not only commit staff time, we'd commit our GIS group and any kind of data that they might need to manage that. But it's really up to the school to drive. I just think we maybe need to at least evaluate kind of our own.
Well, some things I kind of disagree. It's not up to school to drive necessarily because the engineering improvements typically are on our right of way. So if we can identify hazards and barriers on city-owned right of way and make improvements, I think so. In the Safe Routes to School program for elementary and middle schools, there's two types of grants. There's the infrastructure grant and the non-infrastructure grant. I think the non-infrastructure grant should be positively school driven. I mean, that's education, enforcement, those types of things. But the facility portion of it, the infrastructure portion, can be city led and partnering with the schools. We definitely need to have the schools on board. It could be a multi-use path connecting across their campus. That would all be on their property, but it could be improvements on our right of way. So I don't necessarily agree with you when you're saying it's school driven. I think we can be really active as a community saying, hey, we need some improvements here. What's the way of finding some funding to make that improvement? And, could we get a $100,000 grant from Safe Routes to School to make an improvement? That's a huge chunk of dollars that we could be going after. So I think being proactive, which is what I'm hearing a little bit from this group, on the infrastructure grant for the elementary and middle schools, and I tend to think you're going to probably get more bang for the buck from the middle schools because parents are more likely to let their kids walk or bike to middle schools, but that depends on the location too. Location.
Prime opportunity. Probably upwards of 200 homes and more planned. Mentioned that are less than a quarter mile away from the school and yet are prohibited from walking because it's considered to be too dangerous. There's no pedestrian route at all. And there's no shoulder.
I've got a 9-year-old in that neighborhood. I would love for him to be able to walk to school. Or ride his bike and just go down the road.
Explored it, but we just didn't have, the manpower and the timing. I think we looked at it in the spring, like about May, and it was like, with all of the things that we already have on our plates, we would love to do that, but, and also, it's the Oregon Trail, by the way, it goes right through the school, so we have the prime opportunity, and we really want to get that off the ground, and, if I would love to see this group, take
Rally
part
around.
of that effort. It would be a wonderful thing for a lot of people.
I think it's a win-win-win situation because it gives kids exercise. It gives them, it saves some carbon footprint because we take, at least in the end, it should take buses off the roads. It should save some money for the schools because right now they're having trouble, they have funding issues. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to.
If we had a pedestrian facility, that all those kids in that neighborhood would not be eligible for busing. Because they're within a mile buffer, and they would not be eligible to be bused. A supplemental busing plan wouldn't fly.
Right now, we've got a pedestrian system that is isolated. It's in the middle of the neighborhood, and it doesn't connect to the city, and it doesn't connect to the rest of the neighborhood. So we've got one strip that goes through the neighborhood on one side of the street, and that's the only project on the horizon. Pedestrians, and there's no trails on it, nothing. There's a great need, and talking about this problem a long time in our neighborhood, and we just haven't.
Well, Holcomb Road sidewalks were a good start.
Yeah.
So,
Is it possible, John, to get the boundaries of all these schools for the neighborhood?
That, guys, when I said what I said about the schools, I was thinking a lot about their counts, their historic counts of kids and where they're at. I know I've not been through the Safe Routes to School process, so I'm really looking forward to this thing with the high school, and I hope more
I'm
than
not aware of the process you're talking about for Safe Routes to School. It's a national Safe Routes to School program geared towards elementary and middle school, and that's what the dollars are allocated to. It's not allocated to high school, so I think we're talking different.
But I think that the process of mapping where your student body is and what the options are for getting them to and from school, whether it be by bicycle or by pedestrian traffic, is the same. It's not, you're talking about the grant piece, the funding piece.
I like finding money.
Right, and I guess I'm thinking more about the nuts and bolts of, where are those projects at? Not so much how do we fund those projects. I think you're right. They're both very, very important. I've been pretty focused on, where is it that we need the sidewalk? Where do we need the pathway? Where do we need the safe bed crossings? Where can we build bike lanes? Those are the things that I'm thinking about. And for the high school, for instance, it's the same. I believe it's the same process. It's just they're not applying for grant money. So what I saw from Joe Merritt through the county is that they've got that process written out as to what kind of things are required, who should sit on the committee that makes those kind of decisions and recommendations, and it was pretty well laid out. So it's very safe.
Representative, neighborhood association, representative, maybe a law enforcement representative. I'm on the same committee with Joe Merritt to Safe Routes to Schools.
Okay, so he's provided that information. I didn't key in as much on just the grant piece, but for the high school, that's not what they're going after, at least as far as I know. They're planning to fund improvements that they're focused on with this speed zone issue. I don't know about the rest of the pieces of sidewalk that might come out of that Safe Routes to School analysis.
And I'm thinking any jurisdiction needs to find ways of leveraging the dollars that they have and going after as many grants as they can. And I think putting some staff dollars to work by doing an action plan for the schools is beneficial. But you really need to talk to the district and get their cooperation and their buy-in and a partnership developed.
Well, and a project list, because certainly we've heard the interest from the Park Place neighborhood, but the school district is going to have an idea of what the issues are with all of their schools, which might help us prioritize a list. I know that there are certainly issues with the Mount Pleasant area, and there have been some near misses up there with kids trying to cross crosswalks.
That's kind of what the action plans do, is you get a team together and you go out and you walk the neighborhoods and you identify the hazards and barriers for walking and bicycling to that school. That's what the team does. So then they come back and they have a report that's drafted up. And
well, true, but somehow you have to decide which area you're going to work with first. You can't work with all of them.
that's
So
true.
you have to have some kind of a priorities, and the school district could help with create that list.
I would,
I'm sure you would.
I've done that with Gresham, and quite often it's staff getting on the phone and talking to the principal of the individual schools. You know, the district will say, yeah, we support this great idea,
We don't have it in our work plan.
but we don't have it in our work plan. And it really doesn't take a lot of time, staff time from the school's point of view. It could be an afternoon, you know, walking out there. It's just getting them to commit to it. Yeah, we'll spend an afternoon or 2 afternoons walking a mile buffer around the school and sitting and looking at maps and identifying the walking routes and the hiking routes. And then they also have to commit to sending home parent surveys and then doing a student tally in a classroom for 2 days during a 1 week period, which takes about 3 minutes to do. It's a show of hands. How'd you come to school today? I took the bus, I was driven, I walked, I biked, I took my skateboard. Okay, it was a sunny day, and the teacher fills it out and the date in their classroom. That's the survey, the student survey. It takes 3 minutes. But they still have to print that out and do it. Getting the teachers to do it. Sometimes it can be like pulling teeth. But if it comes from the district, thou shalt do this, it carries a little bit more weight than the school is doing. But I've found out how to get on the phone and talk to principals, and a lot of them don't even know what the Safe Routes to School program is.
It sounds like that's a priority. I don't know if there's others, but I just, trying to get a little more understanding of what this committee
Well, I mean, it is a priority, but I don't want to do anything that's going to derail us from the transportation plan.
Actually,
If we get to that point, we
it
need to
could
do that.
benefit transportation plan because you can identify projects that can be put into the updated transportation system plan.
Not only that, but it helps us then identify priorities for, we've had this discussion too, that Oregon City receives far less pedestrian alternative, what do you call it? Transportation system money relative to other jurisdictions and counties and so forth. So it seems like the growing amount set aside from Metro for those types of projects, what they call it, active transportation. And I think that we don't have anybody kind of developing that because the trails system plan hasn't been updated since like 2000. And that's under parking and recreation as opposed to transportation. So anyway, either we relate and we could probably talk about something. So
Okay, so next month we'll get an update on where we're at with grants or funding for the transportation plan. John, did you want me to call the school district and see if they got any kind of a complaint list from parents, anything like that that would give us an idea of where we could look first? I have read it off, I could pop
I
by.
don't know that that would hurt.
Is that another furlough?
No, I work all Fridays.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to do with that just yet, because I don't know enough about that program, but I don't know that it would hurt to get a list of titles from the school district if they can.
My thought was it doesn't hurt to ask, they can only tell me no,
yes,
and then it surprised me.
Yeah.
Okay, I will stop by on Friday. Anything else?
Just got a Holcomb Road sidewalk update on an email here. It's supposed to be finished in a couple of weeks, according to one of the neighbor and I who have been working on the project for 7 years. He just had a contact from John Burrell. I mean, he just read his email. He probably got it this afternoon because he sent an email to him today.
Okay, with that we are adjourned. See you next month.